Bienvenidos al podcast Viva la Vida. Soy tu host Silvana y quiero empoderarte a encontrar qué significa para ti el bienestar holístico, explorando la conexión con tu cuerpo, alma y corazón, con meditaciones, charlas personales y conversaciones vulnerables de amantes de la vida apasionados como yo por el bienestar, veganismo, yoga, entre otros. Si estás listo para inspirarte, aprender, crecer y elevar la energía de tu vida, has venido al lugar correcto. Me llena de emoción tenerte aquí. Hello and welcome to Viva la Vida podcast with me, Silvana la Vegana. Today I'm getting into the woo-woo zone, as I like to call it, of the kitchen. And it's about tapping into the healing power of our culinary alchemy. Food is one of the most straightforward paths to tap into the consciousness that is living in plants. And alchemy helps to recognize the hidden and the subtle fields of energy, particularly through plants. And by intelligent design, we have intimate relationship with plants beyond our nutrition. It's part of us. And connecting one's healing with the higher self offers a massive bounty of healing. This kind of alchemy has the ability to wake up sleeping DNA, normalize unhealthy tissue and psychological process that you can experience. And it also has the ability to bring us into peace and align us with knowing our true nature, which is something that I have been aligning more and more through my healing and eating and food journey. And my guest from today is someone that I have admired from afar. And Aimee Jean, or as her Insta personality, you can call her the Green Shaker. Big passion in life are people traveling to new places and immerse herself in culinary delights. Born and raised in Sydney by health-conscious parents, Aimee had a holistic upbringing where prevention over cure mantra was practiced. With a diet of fresh, organic, and plant-based foods from homeopathic remedies from a young age, Aimee had a strong culinary curiosity, which led to her travels around the world, which she's gonna tell us a little bit more about it. And then she experienced firsthand how different cultures use ingredients, herbs, and spices, not only to enhance flavor, but also for their medical and healing properties, which I love. And it has this inspiration and how she was raised that led her to want to teach others on the power of plants as a way to nourish and heal. Welcome, Aimee.
Hello, hello. Buenos dias. Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be here and to connect and share about our love for food and healing and plants and alchemy. It's the best way to connect with people. So I'm really excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for making the time from your cooking days. I want to know a little bit more about you and how you experience the healing power of culinary alchemy in your life.
Sure. So I have my mom. It was just Mother's Day yesterday, and I definitely have her to thank for raising me this way. I definitely don't take it for granted. You know, my mom made some very conscious choices at a very young age first of all, the way I was birthed into the world. Also, she was practicing a beautiful technique called birth by orgasm, which is where my dad and my mum were actually using pleasure as a way to bring me into the world. So rather than having a lot of pain in your birthing process, I was actually birthed via an orgasm, which actually really sets the tone for like my energy and my nature, which is obviously very high vibration, happy all the time. And I think I got criticized. They're like, why are you so happy all the time? I was like, and then I found this out when I was actually a lot older, when I was 29, when I was studying holistic nutrition, and my mom and I were doing the same course. But anyway, going back to the story, my mom definitely made choices from a young age of raising me and my sisters on a very organic vegetarian diet. And we never really went to a traditional Western doctor if we were ever sick. She would take us to our naturopath or a Chinese medicine person, and we would be, if we were ever sick, we were given naturopathic, homeopathic medicine, like herbs and tinctures and things like this. So I think the alchemy of plants was very instilled in me from a very young age. We would never go to the doctors. We'd always be healing with plants or aromatherapy oils or teas, and that were, distilled from herbs from Chinese-based medicine. So that's how I was raised. And it definitely was a little bit, not the norm back then. And I definitely felt probably a little bit different going to school, eating very healthy lunches. One day, McDonald's, we had McDonald's day at school, and rather than my mum not letting us eat the McDonald's, but she would order us the fillet of fish and orange juice. She would make sure that we had, still were included, but very, would make the best choices for us in the given, situation. So I think I was definitely ingrained in this style of living. And I definitely also went my own way when in my teenage years. I think whenever we'd go to friends' houses and things like that, because we were maybe so deprived from like sugar and all these things, we definitely, would binge on these types of foods when we were out and about at friends' houses. But I think in my 20s was when I moved out of home after university, and I definitely started craving, fresh, clean foods because my body recognized it as real food. So I think I was definitely more, health conscious and aware of, I think also being raised in Australia, I don't know if it's similar to Guatemala, but, we have a lot of fresh, clean, local foods and tropical fruits and things like this. And it's available all year round. We also eat a lot of fish, growing up by the sea. So I think we had a very, a much cleaner diet, I think, in Australia than perhaps, the rest of the world. So my environment, being raised in Australia by the beaches and things like that also had a huge influence, I think, on, even growing up, making my own choices once I left, my family home. So yeah, that's kind of a bit of a nutshell about how I was raised and the power of plants from a very young age. I think I didn't understand it until I left Australia. And my first time living overseas, I moved to London. And London obviously is an extremely different culture to Australia, not only, traditionally, but also, their environment's very cold and grey and in the Northern Hemisphere. So, I definitely felt the difference in food that people were eating. It's obviously much colder. I actually started to introduce more meat into my diet, probably living in London, because it was colder and it was more grounding. And, they had some beautiful markets and things there as well. I definitely got to explore a lot of incredible restaurants and diving more into the Michelin star culinary scene. I was dating someone in finance, so I used to be, going out and exploring and dining. I was probably eating a little bit more bread and dairy and things like that as well. So, but I understood that, oh my goodness, how I was raised in Australia is not how everyone eats around the world. And I definitely felt that for the first time. And that's when I actually had a desire to want to learn more about, nutrition and holistic nutrition. And I had friends back in Australia studying this course at the Institute of Integrative Nutrition. Some of my best friends who were in media and journalists and friends who had worked in TV and stuff like that. And they started doing this course, and I started talking about their health journey. And that's when I was most inspired to I want to do that. I want to teach people how to eat foods that make them feel good and more in alignment. And so that was when I was most inspired when I was living in London. So I think that was the contrast of moving and really understanding the differences of how people eat different foods, depending where they are in the world. And it was a real, eye-opener for me at that age.
And it really helped you to be grateful of that upbringing instead of sometimes people resent of their childhood or how their parents made some different decisions. But I feel like you moving into London and seeing the difference of lifestyles, it made you connect with that magic and that pleasure that your parents imprinted into you since you were little.
Yeah.
How did that develop into cooking?
Very grateful, very, very grateful. I think you don't realize how much your parents do for you until you're much older, when you have a little bit of reflection and respect and adoration. For me, for sure. I think I probably didn't understand that until I left my home country, my homeland, and being so far away from them. My relationship definitely changed with appreciation and so much gratitude for them. I think definitely also, going back to the cooking, side was always, we cooked everything at home. We had a garden, we'd grow fresh, vegetables and things like that in the garden. And my mum would always have us in the kitchen, for every meal. It'd be like, being asked to make the dressings or the sauces or to help cook. It was always all hands on deck and all helping. I'm one of 4 girls, so we had a pretty, big family. So we were always cooking at home. So I always had that love for cooking. I also worked for about 10 years from Sydney and in London. I worked in marketing and events. So, events is always gathering and usually was around some form of food or meal or launch party or launch event where people were always coming and gathering. So there was always that community element working in the, PR and events world. And so food is always a part of that. When you gather for an event, there's always either a dinner or a cocktail party and stuff like that. So I think entertaining and food was always in and around my work. It wasn't until, so I ended up, just to continue my story, I ended up moving to Singapore with my partner for his work. And, that was the year I actually got to study that course I mentioned at IIM for holistic nutrition. To become a certified health coach. And as I was studying in Singapore, again, I had a real realization of where our food comes from. So in Singapore, it is a very tiny island. The whole island is the size of one state, and it is an entire country, but it is built off mud flats. So there's actually no land there for farming. And all the food that you get at the grocery store, which I guess happens in a lot of countries around the world, it's actually shipped in. So it's all, shipped in from places like Guatemala, or places like Australia where they have a lot of, produce that is grown and it gets shipped in. So I was looking at foods I normally eat, like cucumbers or carrots and beetroots and things like that, which are really common in England, London, where I was living. And they were $11 for a bag of carrots or $8 for a cucumber. I was like, what do you mean? Why is it so expensive? It just blew my mind. And I was studying this holistic nutrition about where your food comes from and your food supply and understanding how to eat more in season. And I was like, whoa, nothing grows here. It really made me understand, because these carrots were coming from Australia and the cucumber was coming from Holland. And I was like, wow, okay, so what actually grows in Singapore and Asia? What do I need to eat for where I'm living? And so my understanding of food and the locality and the seasonality for your body of where you're based was really important. It was a really important lesson that I definitely understood. They also have no natural water supply there. Wow. There's no natural spring on the island. So they have piping from Malaysia and a treaty with Malaysia to get, fresh water delivered to the whole country. Plus they're one of the leading scientists in desalination of salt water and stuff like that. They're one of the leading developers in that. And so I was living in this place that just felt really, to be honest, artificial. Everything was these huge buildings and air conditioned and no water, no fresh water. You could really, I could really feel it, in my body. It just didn't feel natural, even though it was hot and tropical and beautiful and things like that. But there was it's just an understanding of wow, it's really important where you live and how you need to eat for the places you live. And don't get me wrong, they had a ton of spices and coconuts and tropical fruits that were, available, and a lot of fish. The fish markets are really popular there, and crab and things like that. So I just started to eat like the locals do. And I think my body started to really adjust to also the environment where I was living. So it was a really interesting contrast. And I actually threw myself into every type of healthy idea of cooking at the time. So this was dehydrating and fermenting, kombucha making, kefir from home. I was making tons of different smoothies and smoothie bowls and baking, and I would be making nut milks, and from the nut milk pulp I would dehydrate that and then make that into flour and bake. I did everything you could imagine you could try in the health space. I did that in Singapore, which was really fun. I think I definitely overdid it on the smoothies, and I don't think I can ever drink a smoothie ever again because it's also so hot there, but it was fun at the time. And so that was when I definitely really threw myself into and then every country I went to, so we traveled quite a bit because it was so close. In Asia, everywhere we went, Langkawi in Malaysia and Bintan in Indonesia and Bali and all of these surrounding, and Thailand, I would go do local cooking classes. Mm-hmm. So I'd learn like the locals do to find out, how to make these curries and these pastes and coconut milk from scratch and stuff like this. It was really fun. So I kind of just was having fun with it. I was throwing myself into just experiencing the cultures of where I was. And I definitely started to understand more how each culture and each country has their own set of herbs and plants and medicinal foods that they were using for both, obviously nourishment and eating, but also healing. So like teas and tinctures and broths. And it's very common in Asia, especially Singapore is very connected to China. It's like a lot of Chinese-based medicine, these herbs and even like balm, things that you would, if you had a scratch or a cut, like little balms and things and that you could put on your body as well. So like just the healing power of plants, and they're so specific for each country that you go to. So it's really beautiful to experience like living in Asia, studying holistic nutrition and really learning about things that were so far removed from my, upbringing. And it was really interesting. I feel like I'm rambling a little bit. But anyway, after that, after studying in Singapore, my partner and I we ended up breaking up. It was a beautiful, end of a friendship relationship, just more, I think, me studying, this holistic nutrition. It definitely, you go through the coaching program. So I was becoming more in alignment, I think, with my purpose and my spirituality and my gifts that I think had been maybe dormant for a long time, working in PR and events and all this kind of thing. You get caught up in this like social
materialistic world, kind of. Yeah,
absolutely. And also living in London and the high life, it was a bit more disconnected from, I think, my very nature driven environment that I'd grown up in Australia, where I was more in harmony with nature. And I think living in Singapore just reignited that in me, really understanding who I am and where I came from. And also I feel like my purpose and my mission, and how I was raised. I really started to understand I was different for a reason, and I really wanted to keep pursuing that. And I think my partner, being very English, we just had a very different way of seeing the world. I think I have a very spiritual outlook on life where, I have that kind of faith and hope and manifesting. That's the whole woo-woo side of me for sure. I definitely was raised that way. My parents were very Christian also. So, we always had that kind of spiritual practice where he was probably more on the academic, scientific, so we kind of differentiated there. And it was a beautiful push in for, I think, me to really go explore how I can follow my main dream. And so on a very, not knowing where I was going to live, I didn't want to stay in Singapore. It didn't feel quite right. Wasn't ready to go home to Australia. I felt like I was going home empty-handed in a way. Been with this person for 5 years. London definitely didn't feel like an option. Been living in this tropical, weather. I was like, if I could live and work in health and wellness, where would I go? And I was like, you know what? LA. I feel like LA is like the mecca and the, epicenter of health and wellness. And I had like a few friends over here, and one girlfriend I actually went to university with, and she was starting a health and wellness company, and she kind of reached out to me. I was back home in Australia over Christmas at this time, and I was still there in January. And she's like, why are you in Australia for so long? What's happening? I was like, my partner and I are breaking up. She's like, I have a job for you. If you're interested, I can help you get to LA. And it was to be the kind of like the events and marketing director of this health and wellness company. So I kind of had a foot in the door to come over to LA. I came here on a total whim, had no idea how I was going to do it, didn't have the visa or anything sorted. And I just had this like intuition. I was like, LA is where I need to be. And so I kind of came here. And in that first year, I was working for her and getting connected with a bunch of different health and wellness people here in LA through the company I was working for. And I ended up meeting Nicholas Torrent, who is an Argentine chef, and incredible human being. I was actually working with him on a detox program for one of the brands we were working under, the health and wellness company. And by chance, he was like, I'd love for you to help me. I'm launching a school in cooking, in holistic style of conscious cooking. And the school itself was called Soul Culinary. And he had been trained by Matthew Kenny. So he'd done the raw food and natural chef training in Miami with Matthew Kenny. He actually did training with really incredible naturopath called Dr. Morse, who does a lot of herb, and he's a herbalist and a naturopath, but he's very specializes in high level detoxification processes through herbs. And he'd also done training at Hippocrates, which is obviously a huge clinic for cancer and healing this through food. So food is medicine, and it's a healing center also based out of Florida. So he had a really broad range of training and background. He had also done IIN, the same school that I'd been to. So he had a crossover there. And so he'd asked me if I would be interested in helping him actually help market the school. And he's like, why don't you do the course and see how it goes? And so I ended up doing my training in solar nutrition, which I don't know if you know much about. It's actually the study of chronobiology, which is eating foods that are in time with the circadian rhythms of the sun. So there are, I can tap into this a little quickly. There are morning foods, which are foods that receive the sunlight's first energy. So foods that grow on trees. So nuts, coffee, beans, coconuts, and fruits. Fruits are all incredible morning foods. They help you break a fast after sleeping. They give you natural sugars to help get your gut microbiome and fiber ignited. It also gives you natural sugars to wake up your brain and stimulate all of your organs. And they're very hydrating. So fruit first thing in the morning on an empty stomach is a wonderful way to start the day. And then in the daytime, once your digestive organs are awake and alive, you eat foods that the sunlight, obviously when the sunlight is stable, so anything that grows on the land, so grass-raised animals, anything that grows above ground, so like pumpkins, tomatoes, cucumbers, zucchinis, anything that grows in sunlight energy.
Root vegetables,
Not root vegetables. These are actually when you go, so daytime food is anything that grows above ground.
Okay.
Because your body is also, so grains are also good, like rices and things grow above ground and need a lot of sun to grow. These foods give you a lot of sunlight energy during the middle of the day, but it's also should be our biggest meal of the day because our body is awake. We have the digestive engine to actually digest it at that time also. And then as the sun starts to set and our body is preparing itself for rest and restoration, where it does all the work with cellular regeneration and detoxification and elimination, our body needs more grounding foods to help us to go into that sleep mode, which are root vegetables. Anything that grows underground is wonderful to eat at nighttime. So when you think about, root vegetables, it's always like sweet potatoes and beetroots and anything that you can find really in like a broth or a curry. There's really cooked foods. A lot of Ayurvedic cooking and Chinese-based medicine cooking is always soups and broths and curries and things like that at nighttime. Fish is also a really great nighttime food because they swim under the water. And eggs, actually, funnily enough, are a nighttime food as well because they're laid in the dark. And all of these foods are also very easy to digest. You're not having a really huge meal at nighttime. You don't want to overload your system. You want your body to be able to digest lightly so that it can do all the other tasks that it needs to do while we sleep, which is cellular regeneration, skin regeneration, elimination of toxins and things like that in our body. Our body does so much while we're sleeping, but if we've overloaded our digestive organs with food, it takes away from the job that it needs to do. And, when you eat a really heavy meal, you often feel like you can't sleep and you wake up feeling a little bit more groggy than you should be.
Yeah, it makes you sluggish, going into that kapha state.
Exactly. Very heavy. So, there are foods that you should kind of, not be eating at nighttime. So that's solar nutrition. That's the style of cooking that I learned all about. Also like detoxification, your lymphatic system, how to like cleanse and detox and take care of your body, and understanding that it's not just about food. It's the whole body. You have to take into account everything, like how we wake up, how we sleep, how we move through our day, how much stress we have. And so that was a really incredible training. And at the end of that, my friend Nicholas was like, you're actually really good at cooking. You really understand it really well. He's like, would you like to start taking on some of these clients that I've got? Because he's like, I really don't want to cook anymore. I really want to focus on doing this school. And so he basically started to pimp me out to a lot of his LA-based clients here, celebrity clients and things like that. And I kind of fell into this cooking world, and I've been doing it ever since. That's been about 5 years now. So it was a very not intentional space that I had expected to fall into, but also it made a lot of sense. My whole life I'd worked in hospitality and venues and with chefs and things like that and entertainment. And so off the back of cooking privately, I launched my conscious catering company. And conscious catering is exactly all the things that I'd kind of learnt about, living in so many different countries and understanding the power of eating foods that are local and organic and in season. So when you eat foods that are grown this way, your body recognizes them as a life force energy, and you actually feel the difference of eating foods that are grown where you live. My understanding of when I was in Singapore, eating foods where I live was really important. So I understood that concept, and obviously my background in entertainment with, events and things like that, it just was a natural progression to start hosting dinner parties and events that were really, I think here in America, where I live in California, we're very lucky. There's a lot of fresh, incredible farmers market produce. I post about all of this a lot on my Instagram stories. I'm constantly just in awe of the beautiful produce. The plants here are incredible, but I do understand that there's still a mentality here in America for definitely a different style of cooking than how I was raised also in Australia, and so I definitely bring a combination of fresh and seasonal kind of style of cooking from my Australian upbringing and traveling around the world into my cooking style, which is very rainbow and colorful and very plant heavy. I'm not necessarily a vegan chef. I can cook vegan, but I really believe in whatever the clients want and need. I'm happy to present that to them. But the power of plants is definitely something that I'm extremely passionate about. And when you leave people with an experience of eating clean, colorful, clean, vibrant food that tastes really good and presented really beautiful, everyone is always so wowed by the experience, and it gives them an understanding, perhaps more than how they've been grown up to eat.
I feel like this is how you ended up with your food philosophy, and the way you put it into practice is combining all of the knowledge that has been taught to you since you were little, but then you learn along the way, and integrating all of the knowledge that you discover in the INN program, and having the approach with these different cultures and being open to, as you said, eating and living in the rhythm of the nature in the place that you are in, because it's not, you weren't forcing on still doing the same things you were doing in Australia, because it wouldn't work anyway. And I'm amazed by it. And I feel like you have condensed 20 years of experience in 10 minutes, which is crazy. And for sure you need to come to Guatemala, because you will be blown away on we don't call them farmers market because it's mercados, but it's kind of like a farmers market, but it's always there. And I personally, every 15 days I go to the farmers market here in Guatemala, and because I go and get my produce and get to have the approach of not only meeting the producer and the people that are handling all of my food, but that connection between you and the ingredient, and knowing that it doesn't come from a bag, it hasn't been in a fridge or store, you don't know how much time. And a lot of people are not that connected with it, maybe because they are not that interested in cooking or having that other thing to do in their to-do list. But I love that you talked about it, because it's something that we really need to take into our lives and have it as a conscious practice, and being mindful about what you are purchasing, eating, and putting into your body, and making it as a fuel for your day.
Yeah, you said that so beautifully. And it's that's the one thing that I want to teach people more about. It's when you realize the power of the connection that we have to Mother Nature is, it's all interconnected, right? We are human beings. And the one thing that we all have in common is Earth, and Earth, it provides us with everything we need: sunlight, fresh air, rain, seasons, food. Most beautiful food is available to us if we understand the connection to it. And every season, I know in Guatemala you probably don't have as many, it's not as diverse seasons as we have here, or in London, for example, where it snows and things like that. But when you understand in winter, there are foods that grow that actually give you the vitamins and nutrients that you need to feel good and to survive. So like in winter here in LA, there's so many pumpkins and squash, and oranges are really in season, and apples and all these foods. And when you look at the nutritional value and the benefits that you get from eating these foods at that time of year, you actually understand like nature is perfect and it provides us with everything we need to heal and to thrive, to be alive. And I'm so passionate about getting people to understand that connection and that relationship with food. And like I said, I'm very lucky because I feel like that's how my mum raised me. If we were sick, she would rub an oil or a plant or give us some herbs or a supplement to take to make us better. And it's like when we understand that Mother Nature has so much already there for us. It's already perfect. We don't have to, I feel like we've been so far removed from our natural way of being. And our natural way of being is actually living in harmony with nature and being connected to nature. And when you are raised in an environment where, you can swim in the ocean every day or put your feet on the earth and run around in the grass and outside a lot more, I think you understand the importance of it, or you just feel better. You genuinely just your health and your vitality, you feel so much more alive after a day of being outside but I feel like this modern day of living where we're in cars and buildings and air conditioning and flying all around the world and, we're moving at this too fast. Our life is moving at a very fast pace. We have the internet now where we can consume so much information and knowledge and technology. It's fantastic. Look at what we're doing right now. I'm not against it. I think the world has to evolve, but I think there is one consistent that we all need to be. It's so important for everyone, and it's the one thing that I want people to understand is like get back in touch with nature, eat the foods where you live, eat the foods that make you feel alive and healthy for the season that you're in your life, in your body and your home. The more that we're in touch with that, the cycles of nature, the seasons, the personal cycles in our own life. As women, we have our monthly cycle. Understanding how we're connected to the moon cycle, understanding how our bodies go through these different cycles also. And the more we understand that, the more we don't fight it. I feel like, for example, just diving into the topic of female health and hormones and, we're such emotional, but we're very intuitive creatures. Women have, the power of giving birth and life. And the reason why our hormones fluctuate so much is because that's what we're actually doing on a monthly basis. We're preparing our body to get, to potentially hold life within us. So when you understand that our body is always fluctuating and changing, it's really listening to those changes and listening to our bodies more so that we understand and not fighting it. Not like, if we're not feeling well, oh, don't worry, I'm just going to have a coffee today and keep pushing through, or, forcing ourselves to get up out of bed to work out, for example, because I work out on Tuesdays, rather than, hey, my body doesn't feel like that today. I need to listen to my body. And I think that goes for both men and women. I think this fast-paced lifestyle that we're all almost forced into, it's not natural. I think we need to really slow down and adapt to the cycles of nature a little bit more. It's so powerful, and you're like, wow, this is how I want to feel. I want to feel this alive. The food that I eat, the time in nature, you end up just being a better human being. And I think if everyone understood that more, we would be a better planet. It would be in so much harmony with one another. We wouldn't be as angry all the time, or if we would just took the time to take care of ourselves first. It's number one. And then we'd be kinder to one another. And when we're kinder to another, it has a ripple effect into how the whole vibration of the planet actually exists. And I think that's my passion and my dream, is like, if I can just teach us to take better care of ourselves, each other, we're going to have such a beautiful effect on the rest of the world. So that's my mission.
Yeah, and for a lot of people, I feel like sometimes when they hear stories like yours, or they read whatever is trending on wellness and all of these new things are coming up, it feels for them that it's too difficult, or because it's so strange of what they have been living in, they don't even try to do it, even though they admire people like you that have this lifestyle. But when they start to introduce this little, I don't know, eating a little bit more of plants or connecting to nature, you start to realize that the clearer you are and the more you remove all of these things that make you go outside of yourself, because it's a distraction. It's a distraction from your reality and from who you really are.
Mm-hmm.
The better it's for you to connect and to feel more and to have all of these spiritual experiences without not even adding anything. So
Mm-hmm.
I feel like having all of this knowledge and how you tap into the way of your style, I know that food is bonding element with people and their energetic and spiritual body. And as I see you like an alchemist, because
Mm.
the way you prepare and present a meal with all of that mindful attention and the love, it's the way that it integrates into people's lives and then into their lifestyles. But I wonder, how do you come up with your menu creations, or when there's a specific client, because they are not only nutritious but they are also designed to get us back into touch with the cycles in nature, which is something that we should always be putting our attention into, coming back to nature, coming back to nature.
Yeah, I definitely get that question asked a lot. Where do I get inspiration from for cooking? And I think I touched on that before. I truly, I go to the farmer's market or I go to my local, grocery store, organic store, and I genuinely, I let the plants or the vegetables or the produce speak to me. And
Hmm.
that sounds a little bit woo-woo, but I look and I can see which foods look the freshest and the most colorful and the most delicious. And I look and I'm like, okay, that looks the best today. I'm going to cook this and I'm going to cook this. And sometimes I have no idea what I'm going to cook, but I pick ingredients that looks really bright, colorful, full of phytonutrients, which is what you get from the antioxidants, the colors in food, comes from the polyphenols. So if you look at food that looks the most like colorful, also intuitively letting your body like be drawn to certain foods, your body knows also. It's like very much intuitively eating is like,
Mm-hmm.
I know that, let's say it's a little cloudy here at the moment in LA. It's a little bit more colder in the morning. So maybe more cooked food at lunchtime is actually going to be what my body wants to eat. If it's a little bit more hot, like I genuinely use my body as a tool to gauge, what do I need to eat right now to help my body feel its best in the environment that it's living in? So that is genuinely how I cook. I always feel like, okay, what's the temperature today? Do I feel a little dehydrated today? If I'm cooking for my clients, like obviously we live in the same city. So I let my body be a gauge for what I should be cooking for them. My current family that I cook for, she has her own specific health issues. She has lymphoma. So she's on a very, very heavy plant-based diet. None of them eat dairy. We all cook with the cleanest, healthiest produce, no gluten. He eats a little bit more protein because he works out quite a lot more. She's happy with a bit of fish, but she also is very happy to eat more like lentils and beans and grains and things like that. So I really incorporate, it's genuinely like it's got nothing to do with what it's actually got to do with everything what my clients need, because it's their bodies and it's how they are going to feel their best. So there's a few parameters that I know that their bodies work. The wife, she doesn't eat eggs. She's allergic to eggs, and the husband is allergic to whey, so any milk products. So both of those are usually off the table. And so I just choose foods, but it's really plant heavy with, seasonal produce. And that's how I cook. And it's always, I think, an important ingredient is also like hand selecting the foods, using your eyes and your intuition to choose it, touching it, feeling it, being called to whatever foods feel really beautiful to your eyes. And then also, when you make it, I make it with so much love. And I think that's an ingredient that
Mm-hmm.
no matter, who I cook for, whether it's a dinner party on the weekends or a product launch or my clients during the week, I'm cooking with this like love and intention and care, and also just like yumminess, because when you choose foods that are in season and choose foods that are beautiful and the most, looking the most delicious, that you can taste that. You can taste the freshness, you can taste the vitality and the life force that is in the food. And so my clients are always left feeling nourished, and the guests and stuff like this for events are always left feeling like, wow, like so alive, because they've had a meal that makes them feel light and clean and vitality. It's very much, that's the whole purpose of eating, is food is fuel, food is nourishment. And I think when you understand that connection and also the power of cooking food for yourself, that is where the love and intentionality is in, and your body receives that energy.
Mhm.
It's everything is energy. Relationships are energy, and the relationship you have with food and the energy you're putting in your body it's all interconnected. Very, very woo woo, but it's so true. It's so true.
And when you make the time to make those questions, as you said, to yourself, like, what am I craving today? How am I feeling? Is it something that I need right now because my body is telling me, or is it something dealing with my mind or my emotions, which is a key? And if there's one ingredient that you can never miss in any recipe is love, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Just connecting to the emotion of love through cooking and sharing love for yourself and through the people that you are cooking is one of the biggest gifts that you can give as being a service to someone. And as I feel like you are telling all your stories, you are serving as a vessel and hearing the plants and connecting to them to know exactly what your clients or yourselves are gonna need to nourish their body and their spiritual body too is something beautiful, and it has a lot, as you said, to do with connecting everything. And I would love to end the episode with this rapid fire questions to get to know you a little bit more.
Perfect.
What is a daily habit that you do that brings you joy to your life?
Okay. So every morning, I can just tell you my little morning ritual. I usually wake up and I will lay in bed for like a couple of minutes, and I usually put my hands on my body and just kind of check in and just check in how I'm feeling today. And how are you feeling today, Amy Jean? And I usually send myself some love and say I love you. And then I usually I will get up and make my bed. I feel like that sets the tone and the energy of like how you taking care of myself. I go into the kitchen and I put on hot water and I make my green shaker matcha, which is on my Instagram, and I think it's on my website as well, my recipe, which is a beautiful, bright green ceremonial grade matcha drink. And I make this. I come back into my bedroom and I usually sit on my meditation cushion. I light a candle. I have my matcha and I sit and I meditate and I write in my journal. And that's my little morning routine. It only usually takes like 20 minutes to do all of that. And it sets the tone for how I take the energy into my day.
I love to add moringa to my matcha because moringa is a herb that grows here in Guatemala. It makes your matcha go greener too. What is your favorite vegan food?
My favorite vegan food? Plants. That's easy. You know what? I'm not a big fan of anything fake. Like I don't like fake foods at all. But I think one obviously any plants is vegan. Like I would say rather than eating something fake, supplement it with a big beautiful piece of pumpkin. And then the one thing I definitely use a lot for my clients is nuts, all different types of nuts and herbs and some kind of like citrus or oil. And I love making pestos or pastes or sauces. And you can use any kind of nut. As long as you have a nut and a herb and some kind of an ingredient, you can also make pumpkin pestos. You can make sun-dried tomato pesto, arugula and pistachio pesto, like all different types of nut pastes or nut sauces. Adds a lot of extra protein for vegans, and it makes any vegetable taste delicious.
Exactly. What do you think will be a habit, step, or idea that our amantes de la vida, as I like to call them, the people that listen to the podcast, can put into practice today based on what you shared with us?
Take the time to listen to your body and tune into you. Like your energy is so important. And I always say this, you can't give from an empty cup. So if you tune into your body first thing in the morning or throughout the day, like really checking in and listen to your intuition, like what do I need right now? Do I need to slow down a little bit? Do I need a glass of water? Do I need to take some time for myself to feel a little bit better? I think the more we do that and the less we keep giving and pushing ourselves, we actually will end up being one kinder to yourself, and you're going to feel a lot better. So really tuning in and listening to your body and what your body particularly needs.
Ooh, I love it. I want to thank you, Aimee, for your time, knowledge, and energy. I am sure that you have planted a seed of hope and curiosity from today on, whoever is listening to us, and will put into practice according to what their height guides them to enjoy life. Please look her up, Greenacre, in Instagram, and for sure I'll be your tourist guide in Guatemala.
I cannot wait. I cannot wait. Thank you again so much for having me.
Llegamos al final de otro episodio del podcast Viva la Vida. Espero que hayas obtenido información e inspiración de él y te sientas motivado a tomar pequeños pasos para gozar aún más de la vida. Gracias por escucharme y pasar tiempo conmigo hoy. Si disfrutaste de este episodio, no olvides suscribirte y dejar tu review. Todo tu apoyo realmente significa mucho para mí. Y si mientras escuchabas este podcast pensaste en alguien a quien le podría interesar, me encantaría si se lo compartieras. Con pequeñas muestras de amor podemos cambiarle el día a alguien. Si buscas más inspiración, continuemos la conversación en Instagram. Me puedes encontrar como Silvana la Vegana. ¡Enjoy! Esta es una producción de Sputnik Media, hosteado por Silvana Manfredi, escrito y narrado por Silvana Manfredi, producido por La Niña Almendra, mezcla de sonido Mike Zhu. Agradecimientos especiales a Tim Tutrello, Cami Asgar y Richard Burnett.
Sputnik Media.